everyone. My name is Emily. I'm our Director of Programs for 11th grade. And with me here today at Attollo's Professional Development Series, we have Marshall Snively, the President of the Lancaster City Alliance.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Just to kick us off, Marshall, would you share a little bit about where you are from and what some of your hobbies growing up were?
Sure. I'm actually a transplant. I grew up in Maryland, Hagerstown, Maryland, which is in western Maryland. It's a city about 10,000 people smaller than Lancaster, but spent a lot of time in Baltimore growing up in other large cities. So and always loved architecture. In terms of hobbies, I drew a lot. Was also in the band and traveling with family. Also ran track, which was fun too.
Very nice. Speaking of architecture, what led you to pursue a degree in architecture at the University of Maryland?
Yeah, it's funny. I was fortunate as a child because our family traveled a lot. My family were very much involved in organizations like the Elks, and we would often go to sort of the national convention. So growing up, we were going to Baltimore a lot, Washington D.C., Philadelphia, Atlanta, sort of these large cities, and I just sort of fell in love with them and fell in love with urban areas, and wanted to be a part of that development. It was great to see like this historic buildings next to brand new buildings and how they could relate to each other. And I very much enjoyed that and wanted to play a role in that. And I thought architecture was going to be the end goal.
Interesting. While you were at the University of Maryland, did you look into any other, areas of study or other career paths, or were you pretty set on architecture 3 or 4 years?
I thought I was set on architecture. It was pretty competitive, and one of the reasons I went to University of Maryland is because it was known for a great architecture school. It also helped that it was in-state, so it was in-state tuition. It was sort of close to home, and I'm also fortunate that because it was in-state, I could leave and not have a lot of debt, student debt, which was great. But I thought for sure that I wanted to be an architect until I made it into the school and and was in studio class. And I mean, I love studio, but I also realized that I wanted to do more than just focus on one building. And so, what I thought would happen was I would graduate with a degree in architecture and then go to grad school and get a master's in urban planning. So I knew, for me, it wasn't just about the building, but how that building fit within a larger context, and that really excited me. But I would say at the time, University of Maryland, their urban planning department was just beginning to grow, and so I didn't think that was going to be the space. So I graduated with my degree in architecture, fully intending to go to maybe New York. To get a master's in urban planning, but made a pit stop in Baltimore that kept me in Baltimore for 15 years.
Before we dive into that pit stop, I'm curious, would you be able to share anything you recommend looking out for on our tour? We're actually visiting the University of Maryland next week. Perhaps maybe one of your favorite spots on campus, or, it sounds like you were very, aware of your surroundings and the buildings on campus based off of your interests. Is there anything that our students should look out for when we're on campus?
Jesus, it's been it's been a while since I graduated in '92. So that campus has grown, so much. But while I was there, McKeldin Mall is just, is beautiful. The one thing that you have to do is at the end of McKeldin Mall, there's a McKeldin Library, and in front of that library is Testudo, which is University of Maryland's mascot, the terrapin. Fear the turtle. So you have to rub the nose of Testudo for good luck. So make sure when you go on the tour, everyone does that. The other is right outside of campus, Route 1. There's so much activity when I was going there, and now it's just blown up. It's like its own downtown now.
Wow.
It's great fun. When I was there, they didn't have a metro station nearby. To get to DC, you had to take a bus a half an hour to a metro station and to get there. To have direct access now to DC, just I would take full advantage of that if that's where you decide to go. If you decide to go, which they should, because it was a great school and I had a great time there.
That's amazing. All right, Karen, we gotta go rub Testudo when we. Yep, sounds good.
Have you done that on other tours? Has anyone
think.
Okay.
I mean, but there's always like those little nuances of like, don't touch this, or you should touch it, and so I never know, and I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna take a step back, but. Now I feel like I have permission to do that.
You have to do it, but take hand sanitizer because everyone does.
Good note, good note. So going back to your pit stop, which doesn't really sound like a pit stop if you were there for 15 years. Talk to us about Baltimore and what led you there and what made you stay.
Yeah, well, when I graduated from Maryland, at first I wanted to go to D.C. I hung out a lot in D.C., going to University of Maryland, had a great time there. In some ways, probably too much fun, but it was a lot. It was a lot of fun. But I found that when I graduated, couldn't afford D.C. And I always loved Baltimore. Growing up in Hagerstown, we would go to Baltimore a lot. As I said, I would go back to school shopping there on Howard Street when all the department stores were there, and where we used to stay was downtown. And it was thriving, and it was sort of before all the waterfront things were developed, and I always loved it. And during college, I didn't go there as often, but I had friends from college that moved to Baltimore, and so I was like, oh well, I love Baltimore. I'll move back, and I'll tell you, I was a little disappointed in the areas that I used to visit. Was not thriving like they used to. Harbor Place had been open for like 10 years, and so everything has sort of gravitated to the water, which was great. But the older traditional, downtown was, I don't want to say failing, but wasn't doing very well. The original shopping district of Howard Street was vacant because all the activity moved to the harbor. I even worked at the harbor when I first moved to Baltimore. I was a host at Pizzeria Uno and was a bank teller. And here I was with a degree in architecture and thinking about grad school and finding like in a year, it's like, why am I hosting at Uno and, and being a bank teller? And there's this organization called the Downtown Partnership of Baltimore, whose mission was to re-energize and strengthen the original core central business district. And some of their initiatives, were like, how do we, make Howard Street vibrant again? How do we get people, back to the traditional, like downtown? And that just, because I love urban settings, and that just like really resonated with me. So actually sent in a cold resume. I had an informational interview with the president at that time, and I guess I said the right things. Actually created a position for me, and I started there as the project coordinator, and instituted a facade improvement program. Worked on a pedestrian wayfinding signage system, which is still there and growing. If you go to Baltimore and you see that was me. And some other fun projects. And every time I talked to the president about plans to go to grad school, I would get a promotion and a raise. So, I ended up not going to grad school. And by the time I left that organization 10 years later, I left as vice president of economic development.
Wow.
So, and it was like the best education. It was like hands-on education in the best way.
Amazing. I really appreciate your story and how you took a leap of faith and you did essentially a cold call by sending in your resume and just hoping that it would get to someone. It reminds me a lot of a staff pillar that we have here. So our students have 6 pillars that they learn about in our recruit program and live by, and then staff have 4. One of them is to live by all the pillars, so just all that. But one of them is reflexive excellence. If it exists, make it better. If it doesn't exist, make it exist. And I really hear that in the beginning of your career path, as you were able to convince this organization that you deserve to be there, and you had a place that didn't exist until you walked through their doors. So that's beautiful. I'm curious, we started in economic development and planning, and now we work in the nonprofit space in Lancaster. Can we talk about that career journey and how we went from Baltimore to Lancaster? Any similarities that you found? Any differences in your role now?
Well, even the Downtown Partnership of Baltimore was a nonprofit.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So, and it's a similar organization to Lancaster City Alliance, where I work today. And the focus for those organizations, are corporate and I should say that they're mostly funded through the corporate community that want to give back and see their community grow. And so the focus is usually community and economic development, and it usually starts with clean and safe. So in the Downtown Partnership of Baltimore, it was much like we have at Lancaster City Alliance. There was the downtown management district, which is essentially an extra fee on properties within that area that allowed for additional clean and safe services. So there was a team in Baltimore, it was almost 100 of people that were cleaning the streets and being guides and providing assistance to anyone that's downtown. So you sort of start there, to ensure that everyone is comfortable, in that environment and focusing on quality of life, and then you can really focus on more of the general economic development initiatives of business attracting more development. And really driving the economy, whether it's corporate down to small business, and creating an environment where people want to live, work, and play, which is such a cliched term, but it's fitting. When I left the Downtown Partnership of Baltimore, it was to continue to work in urban environments. There was someone on my board who was a great mentor to me, Bill Schriever, who owned a real estate development company, and they developed a lot of Baltimore in areas where a lot of people wouldn't touch, and a lot of adaptive reuse, and in neighborhoods that had seen a lot of disinvestment. Also developed a lot of what we saw around the harbor. In fact, my office was in the old Under Armour headquarters, which was awesome. But they were also doing great work in Providence, Rhode Island. We were doing adaptive reuse of old mills and changing them into to residential mixed use. I mean, it was great. We were starting to do projects in Nashville, and I really thought my future was going to be, there. I started that job in 2006. And a year and a half later, we were in a recession or just about to enter a recession. And in the real estate development world, I mean, it was just, it was crushing. That was an organization that went from 300 people to 30 after I left. At the same time, Lisa, another good friend and mentor, Lisa Riggs, had left. She and I worked together. She left to start the James Street Improvement District here in Lancaster, which is a predecessor organization to Lancaster City Alliance. And she recruited me when that organization took over the Downtown Investment District here. And ironically, at the same time, that year I met my partner, Paul, and we actually met in Rehoboth, but he was born and raised here. And I would tell you, we thought that he would be moving to Baltimore. And so what I thought originally was going to be probably a 2-year stint. The company I was working for, he knew Lisa as well, and I told him, it's like, you can't afford me right now. I'm going to go to work with Lisa. I'm going to go work with Lisa for 2 years in Lancaster, and then when everything turns around, I'll come back. And he was like, oh, that's great. And now it's 18 years later, so I didn't make it back. And and coming here, I always loved Lancaster, and it's very interesting to, when I first came here, to come with the outsider's perspective. And moving here from Baltimore, at that time, I think some people were still reeling from the Lancaster of old, when the department stores were here. Everything that we went through in Baltimore. When I came here, I mean, I saw Gallery Road just starting to take off. I saw all these great independent shops. What I found to be a very vibrant downtown for a city of this size that any other city would love to have. In some ways, it's the community. It was almost like suffering a little bit of low self-esteem. So it was a bit challenging, but a challenge that that I enjoyed. At the same time, they had just announced that the convention center in Marriott was happening, and so our role was to work with the downtown area on streetscape improvements to ensure that the business community would be ready for the new everyone coming to the convention center and the hotel. And really capitalize off of that. I mean, we're in a recession when most cities were seeing cranes come down. We had a major crane going up, for a convention center and hotel. The ballpark had just been completed. All this great activity, so we just capitalized on that to ensure that the city continued to grow.
Well, I'm really grateful that your pit stop in Lancaster remained a full stop.
Yeah.
As similarly, I am not originally from Lancaster. I'm from New Jersey, and I often think that we, as a society, forget that diversity also comes with diversity of thought and experience. And I really appreciate how you talk about how it's important to have people from outside of your community be a part of the change in the new community, to really make sure that we're thinking about all of these different aspects. And you walked into Lancaster going, wow, you have so much potential, even if there was a low self-esteem issue. I'm curious, so something that I feel like our students definitely need to hear, and I need to hear as well, change doesn't always happen overnight. In this type of work, how do you push forward when you don't see the results right away when you're working on a project to, drive improvement in a community?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you have to come in, you have to be realistic. Economic development, especially if you're dealing with, real estate development or anything like that, one project could take 3 years to even come out of the ground, right? So in some ways you have to have patience. But I think you also have to be intentional in planning. One of Lancaster City Alliance's largest bodies of work is an economic development strategic plan building on strength. And that was a plan that was adopted by the city 10 years ago, and it was a 15-year plan. So it's
Wow.
With the main goal of driving $1 billion of privately led investment, not only in downtown but in areas that were serving the neighborhoods. So from the beginning, you have to say that these things don't happen overnight, but you have to be intentional in creating the tools and setting the stage for this development and economic development to occur. But in the meantime, you have to celebrate all of the wins, small and large, along the way. And I think as long as you do that and continue to show that there is momentum building, it keeps people enthusiastic. And next thing you know, it's I can't believe that our 15-year plan there's only 5 years left. And I'll tell you that plan, it was. In 15 years, that $1 billion of investment, we are at 10 years, and if everything that's in the pipeline comes to fruition, we're already at $1.5 billion of investment. And the best thing about it is, it's not the bulk of it isn't even downtown. It's spread out throughout the city, which was really important to us.
When thinking of these projects like this 15-year strategic plan, what do you think about in terms of implementing what can make an area thrive?
I think the beauty of the economic development plan is when we call this a community-owned plan. So when it was under development, we had a pretty large steering committee. We had focus groups that included neighborhoods. One of our focus areas is Manor Street, and we also focus on South Duke. So we're always working with we're working with SACA, we're working with other, neighborhood groups. So it's important that it's inclusionary in that, in that way. the last thing you want to do is, be seen as sort of sitting in your ivory tower, telling a community what they should do, as opposed to working with that community. So, I mean, I think that's key. Understanding the needs and the goals of those communities, and then working with that community and our other partners to bring the tools together to make that happen.
Phenomenal. I really appreciate the sentiment of you need to ask the people in the community what they want and what they need and how they would like to see change, rather than just walking in and saying, this is what you're going to do. Sure. In your time at the Lancaster City Alliance, and I guess even the James Street improvement, as it was the predecessor, what has been your favorite part about working in this type of organization?
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, one is now in my role having the ability and the freedom to build such a wonderful team. We have a great team, small but mighty. We've had great interns, and just seeing the impact that we've made on the community, is huge. I'm super proud that we're also seen as a trusted organization where we can bring the right people around the table to get things done. I'm getting better at tooting our own horn, but I was, honestly, not very good at it before, because I was so focused on results and actually playing up the partnerships, that we created. But it takes work and it takes talent to be able to build that trust, to bring those partners together, and that's something that I've learned to embrace more. The fact that we're seen as leaders we not only manage the downtown investment district, but we manage the city's city revitalization and improvement zones, which is a whole other economic development tool, and that has allowed us to assist small businesses in a huge way with loans and grants, and so as much as we work with larger corporate community, we balance that with really intentional work on helping entrepreneurs and helping our small business community, especially those that have been marginalized, creating tools for them, and now working on tools on how we can expand that outside of sort of the CRIS district so that it's more equitable. So it's we are a small but mighty team, and looking back on all of the work that we've done and accomplished makes me super proud.
Amazing. I guess you spoke on this a little bit about in regard to identifying issues in the community by having focus groups and really speaking with local community members. How else do you continuously improve and grow, more so as an individual, to make sure that your work remains adaptable to the current needs of the community?
Yeah, I believe in best practices too, and while I feel like we're on the forefront in a lot of ways, I don't like to duplicate. So we participate with other organizations, we're very involved in the Urban Land Institute, the International Downtown Association, where you can trade ideas, you can trade, again, best practices, and it's really getting out there. Our organization, I encourage our team to join boards, to go to conferences, to professional training. I've gone through that. Most of our senior team has gone through it. So it's as much about taking care of yourself personally and growing personally, as much as working to build the organization in the same way. It has to start with you first for the organization to be successful.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's definitely a goal that I see here at Attollo, that we not only encourage our students but staff as well to really seek out those opportunities that might look a little bit different from the work that you're currently doing but can still be applicable. This is a great time to open it up to the audience for questions. Ooh. So who wants to kick us off?
I will. Want me to use the mic?
Yes, thank you, Zoe.
Is this live?
Yes.
Thank you for coming and speaking with us today. I live in Old Town, and one project that I'm wondering if the Lancaster City Alliance has been involved with is the Mosaic building, and I'm wondering, if so, how do you reconcile such a modern structure in that Old Town area? And, what are the pros and cons?
Yeah, yeah. I will say personally, I'm a fan of Mosaic. I think it's going to do wonderful things for the city. I think for downtown businesses, and that intersection was actually a focus point for the Building on Strength Economic Development Strategic Plan. A few years ago, we worked with LNP at the time, the convention center, the city, to do an RFP to look at really all four corners of that intersection. While Mosaic didn't come out of that initial RFP, I think it did influence Willow Valley's decision to look at it. I think some of the pros of that site is it is a key economic development project in an underutilized vacant site. So we're not talking about displacement. It is bringing in people with a high income that can shop and utilize the small businesses that are within downtown. I think they did bring in a good architect that has done urban projects within historic cities, and there is a challenge. I mean, as much as I think that's that's a pro, it's also a challenge to come in and bring a building of that stature into a historic city. But I will admit that I do feel that Lancaster has done such a wonderful job of preserving our historical heritage and fighting for it, and I think that's great, and we should continue to do that. But I also think that when we have opportunities if we want to continue to grow, what we don't want to see is demolition. So when we have opportunities to go up, I think we should. We should take advantage of that. And I've often said that now architecture is subjective, right? But I've often said that the focus really should be on good architecture versus some of the a blanket. You can't build that there because it's too tall or it doesn't fit in. If we fight for something that fits within the context of the community and the neighborhood, and again that could be subjective too. I think that should be where the fight is, and not sometimes there's just a blanket. There shouldn't be anything over 5 stories. But I do think if we want to continue to grow, where we have those opportunities, we have to go up. But we do have to demand that it's good, that it's good architecture. I'm also very excited about the treatment of that corner to add life with retail spaces, restaurants. I think is great, and we really do see this as an opportunity to make a better connection between the core downtown and the southern end of the city. Right now it's Southern Market, and in some ways some people almost see it as a wall. The amenities stop there. There's there's nothing to drive you. There's nothing to drive you south. I think this could help. Do that.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm fortunate to work with Marshall at Lancaster City Alliance, and all the good work that we do is phenomenal, and it's a great. He's made a great impact, and so I want to ask you, over the past 18 years, I think you said you've been in Lancaster. What is your crowning achievement, or what makes you most proud?
Ooh.
Oh my!
Especially since you just love tooting your own horn.
All right. I don't. There's a lot. To be able to say that we've accomplished so much with the economic development strategic plan that that we developed. Honestly, I think the team that we built right now probably makes me most proud. We are getting so much done. Again with a very small team. And I guess the other piece is the the respect that we have maintained as an organization and continues to grow, I think probably makes me most proud. I don't know. I'm proud of almost everything we do. That's not a fair question. You're fired.
Love it. Dan.
Yeah, so my question as it relates to your career and your trajectory post-college, you mentioned that you started in architecture, you sort of switched to urban planning and economic development. A lot of our students are unsure of what university to attend, what majors to choose, what minors to choose, what career after college they're going to attend, or what they're going to do for lunch. So what would you say to them or to those students who are very unsure of what their next steps in life are going to be, if you could leave them with something like that?
Oh, wow. Are you saying assuming they're going to college, or? Yeah, I would say I was fortunate. I thought I wanted to be an architect since I was like in middle school. So, in my mind, my trajectory was pretty clear. But if it's the same, it's been so long since I've been in college. But I do think you can take your time. If you go to college, what is it, 2 years to, like before you pick a major?
More or less, depending on the university.
Yeah. Geez, that's a it's a tough one. I think you go in, you experience you experience college for 2 years. I would say get out there. I was also fortunate that we traveled a lot, so I felt like we I saw different perspectives and and all of that. So it's kind of hard for me to answer that question when I feel like that I had a well, let me say this. What I appreciated most about in college when I was in architecture school, was by the time I got into architecture school, I experienced so many other things there that it allowed me to to think that maybe this isn't exactly what I want to do, but everything that I'm doing now, it still reflects back on me wanting to be an architect. I'm just an architect in a different way. So how was that for?
I think that answers the question that I was going to ask to build off, which is, I had lunch with an alum of our program yesterday, and a big fear is I am nervous. She was nervous about pursuing different degree programs because of what the career after would look like. I don't want to, study psychology because I don't want to be a counselor. And I think that's a big misconception with our students, which is you have to follow a very specific career path depending on the degree you get in college. And your sentiment is, while you're not necessarily in architecture, you're still using the things that you learned in college to inform the work you're doing now.
Yeah, and before getting into architecture school, you have to do pre-architecture. It was like 3 years before you're actually admitted into the school, if you do, because it's pretty competitive. But I also, admittedly, I had a great time in college. You make a lot of friends with different majors, and you just allow yourself to experience, that. And I think that will influence what your choices, too. While I thought I wanted to be, an architect, just allowing yourself to, to experience, other things, really does influence your, it could influence your choice the next year. Mm-hmm. So I would say don't go in with preconceived notions like I did, but just go in for the experience. I was also looking forward to I knew I wanted to go to a big school too, for that, and close to a big city. I looked at Miami, I looked at Carnegie Mellon, and I, in many ways, I couldn't wait to get out of small Hagerstown and really experience a huge college and just expand those horizons. So as much as I went in, being an architect, wanting to be an architect, I also went in wanting to experience something outside of Hagerstown, Maryland.
Thank you. Yes, Leo, you got the mic, okay.
I have a loaded question.
Oh gosh.
How are you all thinking about gentrification, equity, and then if you can speak on which parts of the city do you think we should be most worried about and or have the most opportunity? I know you started talking a little bit about Manor Street, maybe you can just expand on that as well.
Yeah, the gentrification, that is a tough one, and that's something we get questions about all the time with, like even with Mosaic, right? But again, with Mosaic, the I think what's positive about it is that it was a vacant lot, and that's what we would strive to do. Never have we endorsed a project where you're going into a neighborhood and intentionally moving people out and to create something new in its place. If anything, we should be encouraging development in neighborhoods, but do it in a way where that neighborhood can take advantage of it. Right? If you're a homeowner in if you're a homeowner in Sowe or in the southeast, and there's this inherent fear of when projects grow there that property values go up and then your property tax goes up, right? But if you own your property, you should want your value to go up. So I feel like there's got to be this balance of not fearing development and economic development, but encouraging more ways that residents can that residents can not only take part in it but benefit financially from it. And to me, that's encouraging more home ownership. The more a community owns their community, the more they can take advantage of that. I also think working with our strong partners, whether it's SACA, so working with Sowe is just fantastic because they're all about that. And I think as much as we celebrate a mosaic, at the same time we have got to do a better job of mixed income communities and finding sources for more affordable housing. And the other thing I will say is a lot of times what's left out of the conversations about even like affordable housing is workforce development should be part of that too. So it shouldn't be just about creating affordable housing. It should also be about ensuring that city residents are actually in jobs where they can make enough money to purchase to purchase a house. So it's balancing all of that. When we talk about neighborhoods that I think there's a lot of opportunity in, and it's the way you look at something too. Like through the CRIZ Authority, like we were hoping to buy the Kunstler plant so that we could ensure that it is that the redevelopment of that property would be something that would be good for the neighborhood, drive economic development. Unfortunately, we weren't able to, CRIZ wasn't successful, they sold it to someone else. But that's something that we saw and still see as an opportunity. We're working with the new property owner, but you hate to see jobs leave, like Kunstler. But if they're going to go, then let's work and use that to it's a huge property that could be catalytic for that area. So how do we ensure that we do that? In the southeast, working with SACA on Duke and Chesapeake, which has become its own sort of hub. How do we encourage more of that? And what's great about that, a lot of those businesses are homegrown, and which is great to see. And now we're hopeful that there's going to be a workforce housing as part of that development. It's also making sure that the tools that we have are everyone's educated enough to be able to use them. And there's whether it's CRIZ, whether it's LERTA, all these other programs. How do we ensure that communities, developers know that they're there, and how do we use those tools to influence what we want to see in these neighborhoods. Use them as a carrot. What I would really love to see is, our program that's part of the CRIZ that allows for small business grants of up to $25,000 and loans up to $100,000. Right now is, that program is really just, by state law, you can only be within the CRIZ districts, and that's only 130 acres of the entire city, to do that, which frankly doesn't make it equitable. So we want to, looking for sources of funding now to be able to duplicate that type of program, in other areas, in other areas of the city. So, I mean, I hate to look at things that, were areas that are at risk. I just think, I think it's more of areas where there are great opportunities, whether it's Kunstler, South Duke, the old prison site. We're working on a plan now for the area around the stadium. In an area around and the Amtrak station. So, yeah, we always like to think of things in terms of opportunities.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, Terry.
Thank you so much for this. It's very interesting. And I really love how you balance the community and their perspectives into everything that you do. But I studied evaluation science, and one thing that really interests me is this bridge between research and the evidence that we have in actual practice. So I'm curious, how do you navigate, how do you manage situations where, the research or data might suggest that implementing something in a community might be really, really helpful, but the qualitative perspectives, the boots on the ground perspectives, don't necessarily want that. So what do you do in a situation like that where you have, all of this info to say, no, this will be really, really good for you, but the people say we don't want it?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, honestly, in some ways, we really haven't had to deal with that, but I will tell you that if we are working with the community, it's usually to try to achieve the goals. We'll try to influence, but it could be, research says this, research says that, but in many ways, I feel like Lancaster is special, so sometimes research doesn't matter as much. You probably hate to hear that. But as a practice, we don't try to, to railroad. If a community doesn't want something, we don't. We'll still try to influence, but we're not going to force it on something. Honestly, we have, a lot. I don't want to say enough because it's never enough, but our hands are always full. Working with communities for a collective, on a collective goal, if that makes sense.
All right, Marshall, my final question for you. You already talked about your partner, Paul, a little bit, so I'm going to bring him back into the conversation. I hear you and Paul are avid travelers and self-proclaimed foodies. Within Lancaster, where is the best food located?
Okay, I'm not going to pick one in Lancaster because I'll get into trouble.
Okay.
But I will say that
valid.
I will say that we are blessed to have such a great food scene, in Lancaster. I will tell you, the almost 20 years that I've been here, the way our food scene has expanded has just been, phenomenal. You can find almost any type of food here now, and 20 years ago that was a little bit of a challenge. And I think that also speaks to the diversity of the city. And I'll tell you, one of the great things that we've seen, especially in downtown, is the number of ethnic restaurants that are owned locally that have moved into town. So the city or the region can actually take advantage and invest in themselves and in the city, and that's great to see. We do like to travel, a lot. Baltimore is still one of my favorite places. We go to all of the Ravens games. Wish they were doing better. And I'm sorry for the Eagles fans out there after last night.
That's okay.
But some of my favorite restaurants outside of Lancaster and Baltimore is a great, the Helmon, which is a great Afghan restaurant in Mount Vernon, is wonderful. And at Harbor East, there's a great Italian place, Chingali, that we always try to hit when we get there. We love to cruise. We take, we're actually going on a cruise to Mexico in November.
Wow.
But we try to take a cruise probably twice or three times a year.
I love that.
And we also love Rehoboth. That's where we met, and we go there, probably 5 to 10 times a year.
That's phenomenal.
Want to get back to Europe. Still haven't been to Asia, and really want to go there. So there's a bunch of things still on the list, but yeah, we love to travel.
Amazing. Thank you for still being specific in other areas, because you're very PR trained on how to talk about Lancaster. I thought maybe we could get a little something, but I'll take your answer. I really appreciate it. Well, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for
thank you
having me.
everyone for asking great questions.